Welcome to the JSV Book Club. Thank you all for coming tonight. Greatly appreciate it. So about the book club, we started the book club to really just aid our thinking and thinking of our portfolio companies. We realized a while ago we were spending really way too much time really at the fire hose of Twitter and kind of just in the echo chamber of Silicon Valley. And when we shifted our time to read more books, we found it incredibly rewarding. It was much more informative, especially when we broadened our horizons and looked beyond just the kind of standard business books that are at the bestseller list. So the JSV Book Club motto, which is new, is Ancora Imparo. And the translation of that is, yet I am still learning. Michelangelo said that when he was 83 years old. And I think that's really telling. It's a beautiful motto that really speaks to the constant pursuit of learning. And that really reflects what we're all trying to do here with the book club. So in the spirit of the Medici effect, which was our first book, we believe the intersection of various different disciplines drives innovation. And combining lessons from art, tech, comedy, medicine, music, and sports leads to amazing results. So tonight, we're thrilled to have Joe Montana and Matt Maiocco join us to talk about the book, The Score Takes Care of Itself. We believe the lessons in leadership in this book really apply to any team and any company. So, Matt Maiocco, working on pronunciation, has joined us tonight to moderate. He's covered the San Francisco 49ers on a daily basis since 1995. He's currently the 49ers beat reporter at NBC Sports Bay Area. You can hear him on the radio at KNBR. And he's also a 3-time Pro Football Writers of America award winner. Our guest of honor tonight is Joe Montana. He really needs no introduction, especially in San Francisco. But in case you didn't know, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. Now, one thing I have to tell you that may be a little bit of a surprise here is there is an ulterior motive. So here's a letter from my lovely wife, Ashley. Ashley, raise your hand. It's time to be embarrassed a little bit. So she wrote this when she was 10 years old. Turns out she always wanted to be the quarterback of the 49ers. After you were done, of course. She also requested an autograph in the PS signature. So I think after all that time, baby, tonight is your night. Okay. So Joe has 4 Super Bowl championships, 3 Super Bowl MVPs. He never threw an interception during any of those games. He was a 2-time National League MVP. NFL Network selected him as one of the top 5 players of all time. He had 31 fourth-quarter comeback wins. He holds postseason records for most games with a passer rating over 100, and is second in career postseason touchdown passes, passing yards, and games with 300-plus passing yards. So I think Joe achieved all of this in part because he was a natural leader. And let's hear what Bill Walsh says about Joe in the book. I'm just going to read one quick paragraph. So, Joe Montana's leadership was grounded in this key characteristic. Despite the fact that he was the starting quarterback, with all of the trappings that come with that position, he never played favorites or believed that a person's reputation, status, or credentials entitled him to special treatment. When you worked with Joe, you were treated as an equal. There were no stars in the Montana system, including Joe Montana. That corny old cliche, one for all and all for one, could have been written with him in mind. He led with his own talent, quiet confidence, and unassuming demeanor. Joe didn't have to talk the talk because he walked the walk. And without really working at it, he found that everyone else was walking the walk right behind him. Please join me in welcoming Matt and Joe to this.
Hi, Bill. Thank you very much. Oh, you have a pen?
Yeah.
On you right now?
Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. Joe, great to see you.
Good to see you.
Have you read this book?
No. I lived it for so many years.
So what are you doing now, Joe? We know about the football career. What's keeping you busy?
Right now, we ended up starting a seed stage technology fund with actually our older son. My wife Jennifer's here tonight with me. So my support system, but our oldest son works for me. And we have two younger guys that I brought on that both started companies and went through Y Combinator, and one to Google, one to IBM, and we're raising our second fund. And I started out in the fund of funds with Ronnie Lott and Harris Barton many years ago, and I got tired of raising money all the time for fun and giving it to somebody else to invest. I thought it'd be a lot more fun going direct, and then I found out it's a lot more work also on top of it once you make those investments. So we're having a lot of fun with it. We're seem to be going along pretty well. Want to thank Bunny for his support, and one of our investors, by the way. So, and also shows us a deal every now and then. So we appreciate all his help and work. So that keeps me going right now.
So you retire from football. You don't retire. Was it difficult ever for you, to step outside that of playing every Sunday and just the adrenaline rush of playing in the NFL, and then get into the working force?
Yeah, I think the first couple of years is really hard. I mean, you've played a sport. At that point in time, I'd played since I was 8 years old, and I retired at 38, or 39. I had 31 years of playing a dumb game. But the excitement there was on game days was just impossible to replace. The closest thing I ever found to it was, if you haven't seen Cutting Horses, you should look them up. But you have 2.5 minutes to go through working a cow, and you can't steer with your hand, so you have to put your hand down on his neck. And it's like being on the back of Barry Sanders. It's all I can say. You got to look it up on the internet to get a real feel for it. But that was the most adrenaline rush that I've had. Jen got me involved in the girls jumped horses. I got tired of watching. I tried to jump, but I always say I jumped mainly for the entertainment value of others, because I fell off all the time on that, and people came to watch me fall off. But other than that, that's been keeping us busy, chasing her around.
Well, the book, The Score Takes Care of Itself, My Philosophy of Leadership by Bill Walsh with Steve Jameson and Craig Walsh. When you were playing under Bill Walsh, did you immediately know that the lessons that he were teaching the entire locker room could so easily translate to outside of football?
No, when I first got to the 49ers, I'd come from two different systems while I was at Notre Dame. One was a pure word system, so there were no numbers at all. And then there was the next one where there was all numbers and there were no words at all. And now he had a mix of both. And so I spent the majority of the first couple of years just trying to digest and learn the new system. And as we moved on, I don't think we ever really appreciated what he was teaching us at the time until you look back at the things that he would talk to me about, especially at the quarterback position, because he loved the game, but he loved that position also, and he expected the most of that position, and he would let you know it, directly and indirectly.
You wrote the foreword for this book, and you talked about his standard of performance. And so I'm going to hit on a couple of your bullet points on his standard, what he expected out of you guys, and what he was the groundwork he was trying to lay. You talked about his ability to organize and manage his staff, the players, and everybody in the organization to get exactly on the same page. Yeah. How did that manifest itself, and how did you see that throughout the organization?
Well, the one thing, almost every year he would start off by saying, look, I don't care who you're talking to, anybody in this building, we're on the same team. I don't care if it's the guy cleaning the locker room, to the assistants upstairs, to Mr. DeBartolo, to whatever player. We're all the same, and we'll all be treated the same. And he demanded that of everyone. And if you didn't fit in, if you became that me type person that was all about me, you didn't last very long on the team, because it became more of a distraction, especially as he started. When we first got there, we were 2-14, so there were a lot of people going through. There were, on Saturdays, they would have tryouts after we left practice. There'd be 200-300 people coming through on a Saturday to practice, to work out, while we're in the middle of the season. So he was looking for any way to find people that were better suited to be on the team. And it took him a couple years to get it going and go in that direction. But that's what he looked for. He looked for people that had the same goals, same direction, same drive. Yeah, you had to have a certain amount of cockiness about you, but not the arrogant part of it, because he liked the mix of those personalities, but still he wanted that person that was willing to put in the same amount of hours as everybody else. And not
early in your career, I know there was a story about an offensive lineman who was a really good offensive lineman, who either wanted a pay raise or was kind of stepping out and talking bad about the organization, and his butt was on the curb pretty quickly.
He didn't really matter. It didn't matter whether you were, an early draft choice or a late draft choice or a starter at the time. We had a guy that was a starting defensive back that all he wanted was Jerry Rice to say, when they ask you in the press who was the best defensive back you played against, you tell them me. And Jerry would laugh and would never do it. And he just became obsessed with it, that he was the best defensive back. And one day he got beat for 3 touchdowns, and the next day he came in the locker room and he called himself the blanket. And so there was a blanket hanging in his locker, and there were 3 holes burnt in it. And the worst thing you can do in the locker room is get mad, because he got really upset. And then the next day he came in, there were 3 pieces of burnt toast in the top of his locker room. And then we went to play Atlanta, and he wouldn't come out of his room for the game, and Tuesday he was gone. And so when it becomes about you as the person, and more about you than about the team, he didn't put up with any of that.
You said that Bill Walsh's standard was perfection. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty high standard.
Yeah, and he demanded it from the minute we walked on the field. He used to, especially from the quarterback position, he used to want. He talked about, we used to practice fundamentals first of all the time. I thought we were done with fundamentals once I got past high school, but no, every day we worked fundamentals of every position. And the other thing is he wanted perfection from the quarterback. He wanted you to complete 100% of your passes. And he knew you would never make it, or maybe once in a blue moon you might make it, but it demanded you to concentrate more on the delivery of the football. A guy couldn't just run a hook route, and he said, and you don't just throw the ball to him. He goes, well, you can see where he's facing you can see where the defender is. So if the defender's over here, I want you to throw the ball to this shoulder to tell him to turn that way. Guys running crossing routes, I want the ball 12 inches in front of the numbers, not 24 out here where guys are trying to take their head off, and not 6 inches behind where you're slowing down their momentum. And I can go through, there were a couple great examples up there on the film as it was going through, when you talk about fundamentals and how important they were to where we had gotten. We were playing the Saints up there, and we were having a really bad day. The field was typical Candlestick, nasty, wet, slippery, and it hadn't rained in 3 months. And he called us all up. It was late in the third quarter, or in the middle of the third quarter, and he said, look guys, it was like 38-13. He goes, today's not our day. All I want to do, we're going to just take a step back here. We're going to go back to the fundamental offense. We're going to go back to our simple fundamental defense. And all I want to do is come out of here going like this by the end of this game. And let's get ready and move on to next week. Well, we came out of there going like that, and we also came back to win 38-35 by so many people, when we get in those positions, and whether it's business or sports, we got to do something new, we got to do something right away, instead of really taking a look at where the problem was. And really the problem was we had kind of lost track of what really had gotten us to the point where we were, and by stepping backwards instead of forward, we actually moved forward.
So, I mean, Bill Walsh, master at pushing the right buttons. So when you look at that game against the Saints, where you guys came back from a 28-point deficit, was he, what was he trying to say? Was he really saying, let's just end on a high note and carry that momentum? Or was he challenging you guys that you guys better take this upon yourselves and you can win this game?
I think it was a little of both. I mean, he had subtle ways to challenge you all the time that you really didn't realize, and subtle ways to tell you that you did something wrong and you shouldn't be doing that again. One of his big things for quarterbacks was throwing an interception, but really throwing an interception when you get inside the red zone. And I used to go from, as soon as we walked off the field, I used to go right to Bill. And then from Bill to onto the phones and talk to the quarterback coach and the coordinators about what had happened. And I threw an interception in the end zone, and I went to Bill, and I knew I was in trouble because he had this kind of look going, and his pad was shaking and his hand was tapping. And I got over there and he goes, "What was that?" And I said, "I think they call that an interception, coach." And he goes, "Well, try not to let that happen again, would you?" And I said, "I'll do my best." And from that point on, I went to the phone before I went to Bill when I made a mistake. So, but he had great little ways of doing that with everybody.
Yeah, but especially the quarterbacks. I
mean, he demanded.
He held everybody to a high standard,
yeah,
but he held you to a higher standard.
Yeah, and I mean, he talked about the little things that made the big differences. And if you go back to our first Super Bowl, he coached Kenny Anderson also before, when he was in Cincinnati. And, you know, I talked about 12 inches in front of the numbers. If you watch the fourth down play on the goal line, it's 4th and 1. All Kenny has to do is throw the ball 12 inches in front of the number. Easier said than done sometimes. He throws it 6 inches behind him, slows him down, and Dan Bunz tackles him on the 1-yard line. Instead of scoring and going ahead, we drive 99 yards and go ahead in the game, and we go on to win the Super Bowl. But it's that little thing that he made us practice and strive to be perfect doing that made a big difference in that game.
Now, in those days, I mean, it was, coaches were yellers and screamers, and he kind of broke that mold. I mean, he was kind of a thinking man's head coach. How would he get his point across without grabbing someone by the face mask or screaming in your face?
Some days, you know, you go to work and you have good days, and some days everybody's having a bad day together, and he would not hesitate. Most practice, when you go to teams, it's time to practice. It's 10 or 20 minute section here, 20 minutes for first down, another 20 for third down. We had no time limit on practice. We had a number of plays we were going to run, and we were going to run them till we got it right. And he would say, "Okay, we have 110 plays. You could be here for 2 hours. We could be here for 3 hours. It's up to you." So he kind of without having to yell and scream, he put the onus on us to go out and practice and try to be perfect. The sad part was we were practicing against Ronnie Lott in that group, so he was telling them the same thing. So it got a little difficult sometimes, but that was the way he kind of did it. On occasion he would yell, but his biggest thing was, "Okay, this is how you want to practice? Get back on the line, we're going to start over." So we'd start practice over. We'd be halfway through or further through, we'd just start rerunning practice again.
So a lot of times players are, probably their biggest relationship with people on staff are the position coaches. Mm-hmm. He would often yell at position coaches instead of the players. Yeah,
that was one of his favorite things. If you did something wrong, he would yell at the quarterback coach. And especially as we had progressed along and won a couple Super Bowls, he found that more entertaining to yell at the coach, because they were never expecting it. The player was expecting to get yelled at, but he would take it out on that, and it would kind of ease both sides of it. His point would get put across to the player, and the pressure would get put onto the coach to make sure he didn't make that mistake again.
So let's go back to 1979, coming up to the NFL draft. Do you remember the first time you met Bill Walsh?
Yeah, I actually was in Southern California working out with some of the guys at USC, the wide receivers, and they actually came down to work out James Owens, who was a running back that he was going to try to make a wide receiver, and that's how I met him. I was down there, so they called me in to go throw to him.
And did you know anything about Bill before you met him?
Yeah, you look around, because at that point in time I had looked around with my agent, teams that you were looking for and teams that might be looking for a quarterback and what the best spots might be for you and where the opportunities were. And that was probably one of the biggest opportunities was here. While Steve DeBerg had played for a little bit, he wasn't established at the position yet, and New York was one of the Giants. So I'd heard of Bill and I'd seen Bill, but also knew that his quarterback was also in the draft too. So I really figured if it came down between him and I would probably lose that battle, since he knew that his own quarterback.
Right. And so James Owens was the 49ers' first pick in that draft. It was the first pick of the second round.
Yeah.
Because the 49ers had traded the first pick to the Buffalo Bills for O.J. Simpson, who you were teammates with for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, who couldn't run.
At
that point, he couldn't. Yeah, he couldn't run.
And then it wasn't until the third round when you're selected.
Yeah.
And the draft was different in those days. Did you have a chip on your shoulder because it took you that long to get drafted, or how did you approach that?
No, I think a couple things happened. When you go back and you look at the drafts today, even now, they have the combine, which we had little mini combines just for certain areas and so that they could work people out, but it wasn't anything like it was today. And most of it today it's more of a show about the NFL finding another way to make money. But everything's about size and strength and numbers. And with Notre Dame, I think we threw the ball on average 17 or 19 times a game. If we got into the 20s, it was very rare. And then you have a guy like Jack Thompson, who was coming out of Washington State at the time, throwing the ball 50 sometimes a game. So the numbers get kind of skewed, and what you can do, what you can't do, and you're looking at all the other guys, and you look at Steve Fuller, who came out of Clemson, who we had beat earlier that year. He's 6'5", 6'6". Phil Simms, same way, 6'5". I was 6'2", 187 pounds, soaking wet. And so I really didn't fit into the mold of what a lot of the NFL quarterback, and they're even getting big. I mean, obviously they're a lot bigger now, but I didn't fit into that mold, both physically and number-wise. And in fact, if you tried to put 225 on my chest, I might not be able to get it off. So,
isn't it crazy now that quarterbacks even have to bench press 225 at the combine?
Yeah, I don't understand it. I think one of the things that they overlook a lot, maybe it can help some guy, some obscure guy that hasn't been seen to, but with today's meetings that are out there for everyone to have access to every team that's playing, it's kind of hard that you can't just go out and turn on the film. So you see a lot more with the film on than you do with a guy running a straight line, and I never figure out they make those linemen run squares. I've never seen a guy run a square out on the field yet. I'm not sure, but
or a quarterback run a 40 straight down the field.
Yeah, unless you got a lineman chasing you. They used to not be able to catch you. Now they can catch you.
Yeah. We were talking about this earlier. It was 31 comeback victories, somebody was saying, 31 for Joe. And one amazing one in college, too, very famous Notre Dame victory over Houston. What is it like to lead a comeback? Were you cognizant of, of just controlling your breathing, or like how did you? Why did you have a knack for the comebacks?
I don't know. I just thought, as a quarterback, you're probably the reason you were behind in most cases. But the one thing you know is that you're going to get to throw the ball a lot, and there's nothing more exciting to be in that position where you're just fighting back, and you're going to get, you're going to get a lot of your base plays. You're going to get different types of coverages that, in a lot of ways, you get into that, and you see teams, they start getting into that prevent defense, and everybody laughs because as an offense, you just say they just try to prevent themselves from winning, right? It gets to be the most exciting part of the game. So you don't try to get in it, but when you get into it, it was really more exciting at that point to be in the game. And I had a good team too, so that doesn't hurt when you got Jerry Rice and John Taylor, where you can throw a couple balls 7 yards and they go 90. I got a 90-yard pass and touchdown. But I'm happy to do that all day.
The first, the drive, the catch. You guys were still pretty new as far as in the system. Third year with Bill's system. What part of his mentality, his preparation, really kicked in that enabled you guys to beat that Cowboys prevent defense all the way down the field?
Yeah, I think if you watch it, it wasn't kind of how you would want it to go as a quarterback for me at that point in time, but we ran the ball most of the way down there. And the funniest thing about the catch is that we really had never thrown the ball to Dwight, even though that's what he's supposed to do. We'd never thrown it to him up until that point, and mainly because you're either in a slot formation or you find a way to put a motion and you get a guy into two receivers over on one side. And Dwight's job basically is to set a pick on the inside receiver. Well, sorry. Picks are illegal. So he kind of gets in the way. And
a rub
route, and you throw the ball to that guy, and he falls in the end zone for a yard. And if not, you typically ended up running it because Dwight would be so far behind you. And this time, as Freddie Solomon fell down, who was the inside receiver, and when he gets up, obviously he's covered, so we're waiting on Dwight. And after that play and after that catch, we ended up using that more out on a short yardage situations than we did as much on the goal line. But the weirdest thing was we had, as I said, we'd never thrown the ball to him. But at the end of training camp, one of the second day practices, he made Dwight and I stay after practice and practice that part of the play. And we came off the field, we're both going, wow, he's going senile, because we never going to throw the ball to Dwight. And sure enough, how important that one play became in 49er history over his thinking of the detail to say, we should probably work this part of the play. And he would do that a lot. There were times he'd put in special plays for one special place on the field, and you would run it in practice, and it was never open, never. And so then I'd look at the sideline, I get signaled to play, and I look in, and I get in the huddle, and I'm going, okay, guys, here we go. No, we're not running that. I go, yeah, we are. And as soon as you call the play, bang, it's wide open in the game. And so he had a different knack about finding a weakness and doing one little thing to makes a big deal.
And as I recall, there are NFL films. You can hear him give those final instructions to you before you go out there for that play to put it up high. If that first read isn't there, to put it up high for Dwight.
Yeah, and he reminded me too that it was third down, so we had another down to go. So he already had another play called. That play would have never happened if I hadn't thrown the ball 3 feet over Freddie Solomon's head, who was wide open the play before that. But it's funny how the little things like that happen. You know, you make a mistake and you get a chance to come back. We were playing in the Super Bowl with Cincinnati. Before I throw the ball touchdown to JT, as you run, and when you get man-to-man coverage, your guy's on the outside, and you know he's going to run a crossing route. As a quarterback, you know that when they turn, it's going to be tight. But if you throw it early, you can get it in front of the defensive back and still get it to the receiver. And so I let it go early, and I went, oh, as soon as I turned, the ball hit the defensive back right in the chest, but he dropped it. And then we go on to score a touchdown. So, you know, you never know when those opportunities are going to come. For him, he had an opportunity to make a play, and when you don't make it, then we gave us another opportunity.
On that throw to Dwight, when you let it go, were you thinking that Dwight would have to get up there to go get it?
No, when I let it go, I thought it was the arm, a little bit about arm's length or above. It's like when you roll up a piece of paper and you throw it to the trash can, you kind of have an idea where it's going. When I let it go, and then everybody screamed, so I got knocked down, I didn't see the catch. And so I figured, oh, no big deal. And our equipment manager was an old guy who'd been there forever, Chico Norton. He was never outside. I don't know what he was doing out on the field. But when I came over there to the sideline, he said, boy, your buddy saved your ass this time. I said, what are you talking about, Chico? He goes, he jumped out of the stadium. I go, he's white, Chico. He can't jump. Oh, and I joke with Dwight. I go, if you were a brother, that ball would hit you right in the chest. But no, he made a great catch, and we joke about it all the time, but he did make a great catch.
Well, Bill used sense of humor. You also used a sense of humor to break the ice, and the famous one is before that, the game-winning drive in the Super Bowl in Miami. You spot someone in the stand. Was it Harris Barden who was a little bit uptight at that point?
Yeah, no, Harris is uptight all the time. You can't. From the start of the game, he never changes. He's as anal as they come. And he'll stand in the same position till the end of the game, doesn't matter. But I always tried to be myself, whether we're winning, losing. You know, I still joke whether we're behind or. And in this position, Harris also was a people person. So when you get to the Super Bowl week, we would practice during the day, we'd be free for dinner, and then we'd have meetings again at night. And so Harris was like a little kid. He could not wait to come in and tell you what celebrity he saw that night at dinner. And so we were just, TV timeouts in Super Bowl are forever, especially when you're on the field. And just between, I'd met John Candy a couple of years before that because my contract was up. He owned the Argonauts in Toronto, and he was trying to get me to go to Canada. And so he just happened to be standing on the sideline for some reason, and he was framed between two guys' shoulders. And first thing that came to my mind is, wow, I don't remember Harris saying he saw John Candy. So I thought Harris would appreciate it that I went and said, hey, H, there's John Candy. And he looked at me and he started mumbling something that I couldn't understand about the Super Bowl and we're trying to win a game. And you're looking into that, over the John Candy. You know. But he appreciates it today more than he did back then. But I just tried to, it was more about me just kind of, that's what I would have normally done if it was practice or any other game.
So that is part of the key, to act in pressure situations like you would when there's no pressure.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you'll find is when you're with a group of people a lot, you know their personality and you know when something changes. So the minute your personality changes and you're in a tough situation or you're behind and you know everybody's, well, why is he changing all of a sudden? So I just tried to keep focus more on my personality and being the same guy. And guy drops a ball, yeah, I'll make fun of you just like you'll make fun of me when I throw an interception or I don't know. That was just my personality. Whether it was calming or not, it was probably more calming for me than them. So.
Well, then you can certainly appreciate Bill's, comedic touch. Your first Super Bowl, were you guys in Pontiac, Michigan, at a hotel there?
Yeah, we just arrived on the bus.
Yeah, so you guys arrive on the bus, and the hotel staff is out there to take your bags.
Yeah, and we get off the bus, and I had a little carry bag, and I got off the bus, and somebody grabbed it, and one of the bellmen were pulling on it, and I said, no, it's okay, I got it. And he wouldn't let go, and he's yanking hard on it, and I turned, I said, it was Bill. He was dressed as a bellman. But he did something a little later on in the thing, when it was the last time I ever got on a bus to go to a game. We were going to, because I didn't really, you have to get your ankles taped, or what they call it wrapped, which is a little fast version of tape, and a lighter version, which I didn't like to be taped like a cast, so it didn't take me long to get ready for the game. So I'd get on the last bus, and so we're there, and we're about 3/4 of a mile from the stadium. We could see it, but we're dead stopped, and we're probably there 20 minutes, and we are all looking at our watches, going, "Wow, we need to be on the field pretty soon for warm up." And Bill was on the bus too, and the guy I told you about, Chico Norton, he had an assistant named Bronco. And after a while, Bill stood up on the bus and said, "Guys, don't worry. Everything's fine. We're going to be okay." The game started. We're winning 7-0. Chico scored the touchdown, and Bronco kicked the extra point. And our defense is playing well right now. So, but he would do little things like that, just practicing things. He had a great sense of humor, all the way till he passed away.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I mean, it's kind of fitting, kind of poetic that his first Super Bowl he beats the Bengals, and his last Super Bowl he beats the Bengals. And the Bengals, Bill was a longtime assistant under Paul Brown, and when Paul's time, legendary NFL figure, and when his time came to step away, he pretty much handpicked Tiger Johnson instead of Bill.
Bill.
So was that something that you guys knew about? Did he ever talk about kind of that heartbreak of being passed over?
No, we knew about it and heard about it, but he I've never heard it come out of his mouth once. Now, when he was playing Sam, the second time, because Sam White was my first quarterback coach with the 49ers, and he and Sam had the funniest relationship. Sam thought he was a magician, and Sam would always pulling tricks out of his sleeves and doing things. And Bill would always, the first person he's going to make fun of would be Sam. So they were best of friends, and so was Sam and I. There's nothing like beating your best friend, and that's kind of where, I think he was in that last Cincinnati game. More so, I think he had put the initial Cincinnati issues behind him after the first win, and then this win was more about him and Sam.
And had to drive the length of the field to score the winning touchdown. Roger and Tom Rathman have both told me the story that on that final touchdown pass to John Taylor, that they
were lined up wrong.
They were lined up wrong. They ran the same route but from opposite sides. Did you see that? Did that cause you any hesitation?
No, I didn't see it. Had I seen it, I would have changed them. But what I typically would do is, Tom's like a coach on the field. So when I would break the huddle, Tom was always telling everybody else where to line up. So he took a lot of pressure, especially the running backs, and where to go. And so all I did was check. We had split backs, and all I did was check to make sure they were split. And I saw, one guy out each side of my corner of my helmet, so I figured we were fine. And had they blitzed from the right side, I would have. Tom was supposed to be on that side blocking, and Raj was supposed to run the route from the other side. And had they blitzed from this side, I would have thought it was picked up, and they probably would have fumbled because I wouldn't have been ready for the hit. But no, I didn't think anything of it. I found out after what had happened while watching the film. And it takes a little bit of luck on occasion too.
Yeah. And Bill talks in the book about how that final drive was kind of everything through 10 years of running the 49ers, kind of all coming together at once. And he didn't seem like he always had a great sense of calm, because he was always thinking ahead to the next Super Bowl, the next play, whatever it was. But he says that he felt an incredible sense of calm because pretty much his life's work was unfolding right there.
Yeah, and the best part about all that is I could just see Sam Weich on the other side watching every play we ran, because it was all the base plays again from the very start till the last play. The touchdown was a base play with one little wrinkle on it with JT.
Can you explain what a base?
When you first go in day one, you start putting in the simplest plays that we have, and those are the things that we relied on. That I said, when we step backwards to go back and run our fundamental offense, those are the plays that we were running, and they're the simplest things you can imagine. But it becomes who's going to execute better than who at that point. And obviously we did a better job at that point in time. We hadn't done a very good job with it throughout the game, but at that point in time, we went back to our base offense, and everything just started coming out. And it's just hard to cover guys like John Taylor and Jerry Rice for a full game, and Brent. You got a pretty good core there, and so you could just see Sam. He could probably call every play that we ran.
Josh talked about Bill describing your leadership style. Your leadership style, how would you describe your leadership style and why it was successful?
I think a couple things. One, I was usually the first one on the field, last one off the field. I talk about when I go out and speak and the motivation. The preparation was the most important thing, and Bill taught me that preparation. We didn't have the little earphones that they have today where they can tell you the play. We would have 120, 130 passes in every game plan, probably 35 to 40 runs. Now all those had at least 2 formations. Some of them had 3 formations, and you had to memorize all the formations with every play. Not only did you have to memorize the formation, you had to memorize the order of the formations that he wanted them as we went through the week. Whether they're listed on the paper one way, those could change as we got further in the week. And Jen will tell you, she used to help me study and help me memorize the plays when I got home. I spent a ton of time on my preparation, so when I got there at the right time, for practice or the meeting, I was prepared for practice because I spent a lot of time there. And if you don't spend time, it's easy to tell if you're not studying your playbook and you're not going home and watching film. And it's funny because you can almost tell who they were going to do it to, but back then we had canisters of film. We didn't have the iPads and all that, so every now and then the quarterback coach or the wide receiver coach would stick like a $100 bill in somebody's film canister in the film somewhere, and then they would say, "Hey, so how was that reel?" "God, it was great. It was great." They pull it out, and then they pull out the $100 bill. "Oh yeah, really?" And but I learned from Bill that with preparation came success, and you can't do it, and you can't go out on that field and have to think about things. It has to be natural, and have to have reactions to it, and you have to have traced over plays where everybody said, "Well, you seem to know where everybody was." Like, well, that's my job, because we may be trying to attack this side of the field, but if I get flushed that way, I need to know where everybody is over here, because I'm not the best person to have the ball in my hand, and I need to get it to somebody quick. And so I needed to know where everybody was, and I prided myself in making sure I knew that.
How much? I mean, during that time, Bill had two of the all-time great leaders. You know, you on the offensive side and Ronnie Lott on the defensive side. Two leaders who are completely different in your leadership styles. Did Bill foster that? Did he, encourage you, encourage Ronnie to kind of take ownership of your side of the ball?
I think in the beginning he may have kind of coached you along a little bit to kind of that you were going to be that person. You didn't have to look very hard to get Ronnie to do it, because Ronnie, he had a fiery side to him, and but yet he did the same thing. He was prepared, and he didn't do anything or ask anything from anyone that he didn't do himself and wasn't willing to do himself. And he would hit anything standing around. You would walk around in the locker room, and sometimes you look and you go, the linebackers would have these huge bruises on their back. Well, how the heck do you get a bruise on your back, Ronnie? He said, if you're standing up around a pile, you better move, because Ronnie is coming in there with his head. And but he was a worker, and he was a loud leader. But that was, everybody expected that from him. If I tried to do that, everybody was, what are you doing? What are you talking about? I didn't yell at people, but most of the time I tried to help people when I was out there, because I would tell them, I go, guys, especially a left tackle, those guys always had the toughest job. They're blocking the best pass rusher. And if I get hit a couple times, okay, do you need help over there? How can I help you? You need a tight end, you need a back. Just tell me what we can do. We need to fix it out here right now, because I don't, if you start yelling at people from my side of the point, I would lose somebody. And I don't need to lose anybody. I need everybody still to be concentrated. Guys are dropping balls. Hey, I'm going to throw an interception. I'm going to overthrow somebody, or somebody wide open. It's not about, it's how you react to that miss that makes the difference with the team. Because we all knew that once we got to the sideline, we're all going to get yelled at if we don't fix it while we're out there.
Bill talked about your leadership style, and he listed 12 attributes in you. One of them is blending honesty with diplomacy. So you can be honest with a player, but also do it in a way that you can have a reasonable and rational discussion.
Yeah, I mean, there's always sometimes, I think one of the things that people forget about a lot is that the guys on the other sideline are getting paid too. Sometimes that guy covering one of your guys may be better than the guy you have at the point in time. And it's always trying to find a way, we're trying to work as a team and as a unit to get something accomplished. And if you have a weak link, pull him out in front of everybody just in most cases makes it worse, in my point of view. So I tried to find ways to work with them, and if it was the guard having an issue with, you guys got Reggie White. Our guys, that's all they could talk about. He used to line up not on the center and not on the guard, and he would get in an angle like this, and literally, I could see Randy Cross trying to squeeze as far down into that gap as possible, because here's one of the best players in the history of the NFL, and sometimes you're singled up on him, and he's got an advantage because he's right there. So you try to find ways to get the double team over there and slide the blocking as opposed to leaving him by himself. And I don't know, I just think we were a lot more successful when we tried to help each other as opposed to point fingers at whose fault it was.
And was that the approach you took in that game in Philadelphia, where you got hit repeatedly?
Yeah.
You took a beating that game and still came back and won it.
But yeah, I don't remember ever saying anything. Well, in the beginning, I remember thinking to myself, because there was Buddy Ryan defense, who was very, very, they had a big physical team. And everybody said we were a finesse team, and we get the ball first, and I think I threw a 60, 70-yard touchdown to Jerry. because they blitzed, they played man-to-man, and we had an easy touchdown. And I walk off the field going, wow, this is going to be easier than I thought. And I never picked myself up off the ground more times than that game from that point till into the fourth quarter, where we ended up scoring, I don't know, what, 3 touchdowns, to come back to win. But it was just being persistent, and the guys just keep fighting and, you know, not giving up on each other. And we found ways to get it done and take advantage of things as the game went on.
You know, you're with a group of guys for a long period of time, from, you know, the beginning of training camp through the Super Bowl. There's going to be emotions. There's going to be issues among teammates. One of the things that Bill said, do not let differences or animosity linger.
Yeah.
So how did that, I mean, I'm sure you saw some dust-ups in the locker room from time to time or on the practice field.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Bill did was he left the locker room to the guys. So if there was an issue, if it didn't get fixed right away, he would call in, like me, Ronnie, Keena, Randy Cross, and whoever, Keith Von Horst, and say, guys, there's a problem going on. You need to fix it. And I don't want to be the guy to do it. You guys should take care of it. I let it go for a couple of days, and it doesn't seem like it's getting corrected. So I'll give you another day, and if you don't do it, then I'll do something about it. But and we honestly, we didn't really have a lot of those problems. Very rare on that team, because Bill basically looked for personalities that he knew would mesh and get along. Yep, there were some eccentric here and there, but still in the end, he knew that somehow they would still mesh together and be good for the team and the organization, and not just for, you know, that individual.
How tough was it to play for Bill when you were, you know, the most accomplished quarterback in the league, the best quarterback in the league? You're going to be a Hall of Famer, and it seemed like every year he would kind of find ways to either challenge you or make you feel like you hadn't earned your spot. That had to be really difficult.
I think initially, you know, you try to understand what he was trying to do. When you look back on it, you know, I'm very, very competitive. I mean, we used to play. We played the stupidest game you've ever seen. Can't even tell you how it came about. But the quarterbacks would go out before practice started, and the temporary goalpost had a hole in the top of the goalpost. And we would get rolls of tape that were take about a quarter of it off, and then they would fit in the top of that hole. And so we'd sit there trying to see who could get the most in the hole before we would go to practice. And if I was even or one behind, they were starting to warm up, and I'm still trying to get one in to tie, because I'm not going to let anybody it didn't matter who it was. I didn't want who had more in than me. I wanted to be at least even before I walked out on the field. But I was very competitive, and I think a lot of that challenge came from him knowing how competitive I was and knowing that how I would react. I wouldn't react negative to it. I would be more aggressive with it. And in the end, it probably was the best for me.
Yeah, okay. Well, with that setup, I mean, in 1987, you had already won 2 Super Bowls, and the 49ers, Bill Walsh makes a trade to bring Steve Young over from Tampa Bay. Yeah, how did that sit with you?
At first, I wasn't. You know, I was understanding at first, because I just had a back surgery, and you know, Jennifer will tell you she had to ridicule me into getting back up and off the couch and start working out again, because I honestly thought, well, maybe this is time for me to call it quits. But she knew in my heart that I wasn't ready to go. And you know, he has to protect the organization at the same time, so he didn't know whether I'd make it back or not, or I had made it back. But at that point in time, I had gone our offensive line coach was fining the offensive lineman for anyone who hit me. So, because that's how frail I looked coming back from when I came back to play in that first game against the Cardinals. And so I'm sure he was doing a lot of that, but he also knew at some point in time when I was healthy that it still was that little thing that would kind of keep spark going in me. Because like I said, I'm very competitive, and I'm not going to let anybody beat me there.
Yeah. So the follow-up question on this is that 49ers you won the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. The next year and the year after, you were an MVP. A couple of years after that, and Bill in the book says about you and Steve, overall they did help each other. Perhaps it's wishful thinking, but that's how I would like to think it was. So do you think that Steve has said that there's no question he was better because he wasn't ready to play, and he ended up becoming a Hall of Famer. Do you think there was anything about that helped you?
Well, I think just the overall part of it was the competition part of it. Was I helping anybody? Absolutely not. Everybody said, well, how do you help? Did you help prepare him? I go, not my job. My job was to make sure he stayed behind me and prepare myself. I had enough issues preparing myself, let alone trying to prepare somebody else just in case I couldn't play. That wasn't my job. And like I said, I felt the duty that, okay, you're going to have to take it. Somebody's going to have to take it. No, I'm not going to give it up to anybody. And so, yeah, I think probably competition-wise, yeah. I'm not. I'll take competition any day. I'm not afraid of the competition. If I lose, I lose, but I'm not going to back down from it.
I think, Josh, do you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to ask a quick question. There was one thing in the book I thought was really interesting. Bill actually talks about how part of the reason for all the success was that he expected the veterans to really teach the rookies and bring them along. It's related to the Steve question, obviously. And,
yeah.
You know, it's an interesting cultural thing. He specifically says we expected the veterans to train their replacements, which seems like a really difficult thing to do. So I don't think
it's really train your replacements. I think it was more of a train them about what is expected of them in the organization. And you know, everybody, I usually start off when I speak about, and I say, you know, we all heard that thing, there's no I in team, right? And I say that, how many people believe in that? And people raise their hand, and I say, well, I don't. Because I think they were really talking about the me person, not the I person, because I think that every person should be held accountable as they come to work every day and should be saying to themselves, what can I be doing to make myself better that will in turn make my team better? And I think that's part of it, is you don't have the time and effort to try to train somebody behind you at that level and do the job you need to do yourself, and be prepared to do it on a day-to-day basis. Yes.
You pointed at me, which makes it even more special. You said there's no I in team, but there's a me in team.
No, everybody says there's no I in team. Yeah. I say there is.
Totally, I get that. You know, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry, we all have personal problems.
But of all the people that we hated, the Eagles, the Washington, you guys are the awesome team that we played. And so the catch to us was, to me, was like, if anybody was going to lose anybody, it would be the San Francisco 49ers. My question is to you is, have you had any stories that involve Roger Staubach or Denny White, that you can tell any stories involved with the Cowboys that's been a positive story? Well, I'm kind of curious because I love you and I love the Cowboys.
I've probably spent more time around Roger since we both have retired. because he was actually at the end of his career as we went through that, and I really didn't come across those guys much unless we were playing them on the field. Most of the guys stayed in Dallas, and but the thing that everybody forgets about the catch, and especially the Cowboy fans, they seem to think that the catch was the end. Really, it was the tackle that saved the game by Eric Wright. After we scored, the Cowboys got the ball back, and people seem to forget they hit, I think it was Butch Johnson, one of the Johnsons, right, coming down the middle, and Eric Wright makes a touchdown-saving tackle by grabbing him by the back of his shoulder pad, and then they don't score. Otherwise, if he doesn't make the tackle, they score a touchdown, we lose.
Do you know Greg Aiello from the NFL office?
Yep.
Notre Dame guy.
Yep.
He just told a story. He's retiring, and he was an intern working for the Cowboys in 1979, and he was in the draft room, and Gil Brandt and Tom Landry, they'd have their draft board, and they would always take the top guy on the list. And apparently, when the Cowboys selected late in the second round, the top guy on their list was Joe. And Tom Landry made the call, according to the story that just came out, was that we already had two quarterbacks. So they had Staubach and Danny White, and so they went with the next guy. So I'm sure you've heard the stories about how you almost were a Cowboy.
Well, I heard from Gil Brandt a number of times. I've run into him because it's funny because in the draft, they set the guys up a lot of times. Everybody tells you they're going to take you sooner than they're going to take you. So, and everybody said, well, were you disappointed you didn't go in the first or second round? I go, I wouldn't even have thought about it if so many teams hadn't said, well, we're going to take you in the first or second round. Otherwise, I was just happy to be in the NFL at that point in time. I mean, I didn't really set the world on fire in college, so I was.
Joe, from a leadership perspective, what are your thoughts on team athletes using their professional platform for political activism?
I think the platform is fine to use. It's just in the middle in games. I think you have so many other mediums that you have the opportunity to use. Back when I first started playing, probably different, right? You don't have all the things that are available to guys today to talk about the things they want to talk about and get the message out. In the middle of a game, I just don't think it's the right forum. Yeah.
A lot of what you talked about, the competitive spirit, it really sounds just like you have a lot of grit and perseverance. Where does that come from?
I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and I grew up at we had two high schools that under the same school system, and we were in a coal mine. There were coal mines up and down in our town, steel mills along the river, and we had two school systems that ended up. One was 75% white, the other was 80% African American. But we fought all the time for the championship in football and basketball, and then we're under the same school district, so we combined schools, and then for the first couple of years, it was a challenge. I mean, every day at school, you never knew what was going to happen. I mean, we walked in one day and our building was on fire. They had started a little bit of conflict. There were 3 feet of smoke on the roof, and people, we had stabbings and shootings in the high school, and then all of a sudden everything settled down and changed. But going through that part, we went through, at one point, there was a little bit of racial tension, and they kicked the African Americans kicked everybody, all the white people out of school except for me. I was allowed in because I was on the basketball team, and so there were challenging times. I mean, there were times we would play other schools, and because of who we were, I mean, we came out of the gym, and then we would have line from, you have 4 or 5 different doors, and we'd have lineups there would be people lined up funneling to our bus, and they were throwing stuff at you, hitting you, beating you on your way to your bus, smashing your windows. It was a grueling time, but we fought through it, and we got through it together, which was the best part of it. And I think one of the things about sports that you learn right from the beginning, race, religion, doesn't matter. You know, those are the closest knit groups that you'll ever see. And how it doesn't translate into the rest of the world, I don't know, because it's so prominent on the teams that if you're doing your job and playing and doing the right things, the respect on that group is just so different that I would just wish we could find a way to push it to the rest of the world.
And there's a question in the back.
So I was really intrigued by the discussion around fundamentals and Bill's emphasis on it. And I'm a strong believer in fundamentals too, but I found people who are new to something are very open to the fundamentals, and people who are true experts and masters really believe in the value of fundamentals. It's all the gap in between. And especially a lot of super talented entrepreneurs who really need to focus on the fundamentals are really resistant to it. And I see definitely some overlap between that and being, you know, a rookie quarterback with a lot of expectations. Do you remember what got you to buy in on fundamentals and got the team to buy in on fundamentals? Because a lot of people think they've advanced too much to go back to, you know, how to run a hook route properly, how to throw an out exactly 12 inches in front of the receiver, et cetera.
We were forced to do it. I mean, you didn't have a choice. We start practice every day with going basic footwork for a quarterback. Bill believed and never changed that belief that quarterback's accuracy, the most important thing for a quarterback, wasn't your arm strength, wasn't your size, it was your accuracy. And that was all driven from your waist down. And if your feet weren't right below you, there's no way you could throw a ball accurately. And we worked footwork every day, Friday all the way through Saturday, even before practice. And sometimes you just have to start making it become a daily routine where they don't really have a choice but to go back and work on it. And then all of a sudden you start to see how important it really is. And hopefully they catch on. If not, Bill would see if they could catch on with another team.
Mike?
Joe, just throwing this out there, do you see any similarities between Ronnie Lott and Draymond Green?
Draymond's a little bigger. No, Ronnie was I think Ronnie had a little more control. A little bit different situation though, because you're out on a field and a little easier to hide a lot of emotions underneath the helmet and things where, you know, and for Draymond, as you know, he's on a court and there's not a lot of places you could hide or get away with anything that you do or say. But personality-wise, there's some similarity in the just the pure passion for the game.
We're a little all over the map. I just wanted to follow up on your question where some of this comes from. So my question is, what's the most important thing you learned from your mother?
From my mother? How to make raviolis. My mom was a big silent support system of my whole upbringing, where she really, I played sports. I played baseball, basketball, and football all the way through till I got to college. So 364 days a year, I was gone. And the one solid part of that was always my mom, because she had the hardest work. First of all, she had to work with my dad in the same office for 28 years. And then be separated from me all day, and then be separated from me again, where he would go to the practice and she would make dinner and do, be at home. She persevered that way, and I think probably made it when I look back on it, just that she never really made a fuss over that until later in life, where she tells my wife that she missed, my dad stole me from her because I was always gone with sports, and that she didn't have as much time with me as you like. And then you look back and, you know, I look at the rough times that she had to go through, because heck, we're gone. She would go to the store, she would cook the meal, she would clean up the meal. My dad would help he did do some good dishes, but in the most cases, she did, you know, all that type of work. So
I think I can answer that.
She's probably better.
Selfless, and she is the softness and the kindness and the compassion that you have.
Oh, thank you.
I think just one more.
Okay. Well, let me, if you don't mind, Joe, I just wanted to ask you about how your relationship with Bill, like after your playing days were over, how did it change? And you spent a lot of time with him when he was dying. What was that?
Yeah, Bill, it changed. Obviously, one of the things that you realize is that for a while he was the president or general manager at the same time, and so while he likes to have a closeness with the players, he still has to have a separation, and he was able to do that. And when, you know, at first it's hard to figure out, you know what, you know, he wants to have fun, but yet there's still a distance. And then once he retired, I wanted to kick him for retiring so early, because he went through some stressful times, but he handed over a team that might have been the best teams that we had the whole time. I mean, we should have won 4 Super Bowls in a row with those teams. And with him leaving, I think kind of took a little luster off of it after a while. And but his humor, and you know, we talked about our relationship and the things that took place, but his humor never changed, and till the day he died. Ronnie and I were the last 2 players to go in to see him before it was only going to be the family that came in. And Ronnie said goodbye, and he had walked out, and I said goodbye, and I was starting to walk out, and he said, "Hey," and I said, "Yeah, Coach, can I get you something? You need something?" He goes, "No." "You owe me any money?" I said, "I don't think so." I said, "Do you need some?" "I think I got some right here for you." He goes, "No, just checking." But I mean, he was a special guy. I wish he passed away way too early for me.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Joe. Wonderful conversation on the book.